So, to get things started, by show of hands, how many people here are responsible for at least 50% of the selling in your company? By raise of hands. Okay. Pretty much everybody, right? By raise of hands, how many people here fundamentally believe in your heart of hearts that you could probably do something better about improving your sales process? Yeah? Believe that too? Cool. How many people here, by show of hands, have outsourced any kind of, or hired in any kind of business development help? Either you've got somebody in-house that's doing business development. How many people here are thinking about it or have done it, it's failed, and you decided? I got bigger hands doing that. How many people here wish that there was like a Tinder app for hiring salespeople? And just like, okay, scroll, no. So, how many people here, by show of hands, would rather spend 3 days stuck in a closet tweaking CSS code than doing their next sales meeting? Anybody prefer to do CSS coding over selling? Anyone? Only 4, 5, 6 people? So if you have any CSS code that needs to be done, find those people. So this is probably how it felt having a salesperson in-house sometimes, and sometimes how it feels when we're selling. So first of all, I want to thank the Bureau of Digital, especially want to thank Brett and Lori for having me here at the event. This is a picture I took this morning. How fabulous is this place? How about a little applause for choosing this place? And I also want to thank Carl for being Carl. It's amazing when you go to images.google.com and you type in Carl Smith, Digital Bureau of Digital, what you can find. Just fabulous pictures. This is my Andy Warhol impersonation. So I'm kind of curious what the backstory is on these photos, but we'll get to that tonight after.
This is the guy that took the photo around the edges.
Ah.
I was holding a friend's baby, and I was like, oh, wait, that was your baby. Yeah.
Good to know. Carl is not available for nanny services this evening. So I also want to thank you guys, especially. Many of you received a LinkedIn message from me. How many people received a LinkedIn message from me? Yeah? And I want to thank you for the amount and the number of responses. I've done hundreds of conferences, workshops, events, bar camps, and oftentimes I send out these messages ahead of time because I want to get a feel for where people might have questions or if there's any particular areas that they want to kind of hit on. So in those messages I sent out, I ended with a question that said, hey, is there any specific sales-related questions you'd like to answer? And some of you said, no, I know I've got some sales questions. I hope to get those answered. I don't know exactly what they are. I'll hit you up when I get there. Others of you wrote me pretty long letters. Got a little detailed. There's a lot to be said about the vulnerability, and I think it says a lot about the community of the people that are in the room, because I think we're all trying to figure this out, right? Sales is really, really frustrating. I've been doing sales for 20 years. It's frustrating for me on a daily basis, right? We're willing to work hard at sales. We're willing to work harder to do sales. We grind, like this guy. Does it feel like this sometimes? We're grinding, and we ask our teams to grind with us, and we ask them to stay late, and we do those RFPs we know we don't want to do and probably shouldn't do, but we do them anyway. How many people do those? And we grind and we grind and we grind. And what ends up happening a lot of times is we grind ourselves to a halt. And we get to a point that instead of reaching the potential of our company, we end up reaching our limits. It's like, that's it. Not doing another RFP. I was talking to Henry last night. That guy calls me back. I don't even know what I'm going to do. Remember that? He spent, I'm not going to say how much, but it was a significant investment on a sales process. And at the end, they're like, oh, sorry, you went with somebody else. But then, was it 2 weeks later? You got a call from somebody else, you did no work, and you got the same size deal. That's a head scratcher, right? But it happens. And it's really hard. It's really frustrating. There's a lot of times there's this perception that there's black box magic around selling, and I don't believe that there is. I think that sales can be a process. And so usually when I talk with people, there's usually 3 things that they're looking for when it comes to selling. So number 1 is, gosh, I'd really like to find better customers. How many people would like to find better customers? Do you know what I mean by better customers? Maybe you've got 10 people that you're working with, 10 teams. Maybe you've got 50 customers. Maybe you've got 100 customers. But if we take out a slice of those, there's probably maybe 10% of those. Maybe it's 1 out of 10 or it's 5 out of 50, that those are your ideal customers. The people that treat you like a partner. The people that treat you with appreciation. The ones that aren't grinding you down on price. The ones that appreciate the value and the time and the effort that you put in, right? So how many people would like better customers? Yeah? So there's a second thing that people usually ask about is, look, I'm actually okay with customers, but what I want to do is grow revenue. I've been staffing up. I was just talking with Ann. It's Ann, right? Yeah. And in 3 years, she went from herself to now 25 people. She's staffing up. Projects are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And now it's ready to, like, okay, I'm ready to take the next jump. I'm ready for that 6-figure job, or I'm ready for that 7-figure job. I'm ready to take on that Fortune 500 client. But how do I do it? Because the sales process a lot of times is very different when I'm selling a $250,000 deal versus a $50,000 project, right? So how many people would like to have just higher revenue per deal? Anyone? Okay. By the way, I kind of require some interactivity if you haven't noticed. So I know it's late in the day, and you're all eating the fail chips, which are definitely fail chips. They're pretty cool, actually. It's an interesting marketing gimmick. But I'm going to ask you guys to be doing some real work, not just raise your hand, but on the table there are some worksheets that you're going to have to pass around and get some real work done. So just so you know, it's going to be like this for the next 45 minutes. Are you cool with that? Everybody cool with that? Yeah. Okay, cool. So the third thing that people ask about is, look, I've got customers. I'm actually pretty good with the revenue side of things. But the problem is, don't tell anybody this, but I don't really know what I'm doing. I get this lead that comes in, or a referral, and then it's a fire drill! And the team's running around, and you're patching it together, you get the work done, you get the proposal out, and they say yes, and you're like, oh, they said yes. Oh, shit, I'm so tired. Now we have to do the work, right? It's like so much work. That's the grind when it comes to selling sometimes. So there's customers. I want better customers. There's revenue. I want more revenue. Or there's process. I want a smoother process. I want a scalable process. I want a repeatable process so that not everyone is like fire drill. Anybody seen the movie Up? Yeah. Squirrel! It feels that way, right? I love that movie. So one of the things that I've done, and this is the work part of the day. So on the ends of the tables, you'll see there are these worksheets. And so if you take one and pass it down, if you haven't already, there should be enough for everyone. If there's not enough, raise your hand. If there's extras, pass them around. And if there's still not enough, then just take out a blank sheet of paper and draw along. Is that cool? I assume most of the people in here are pretty good artists, much better than me. My cows, my dogs, and my humans all look the same when I draw them. So we're going to be working on this worksheet in just a few minutes. This is my son. He learned how to take selfies recently. And with your permission, I'm going to have him help me with this presentation because I think there's a lot of lessons learned. I've learned by looking at my phone after giving it to him for about 20 minutes what the world of a 5-year-old is. Like pictures of fire hydrants are really interesting for some reason. So I've got lots of little selfie pictures I've thrown in here. The other thing that as I mentioned, this is going to be interactive. So I'm going to be asking you to do some work. So follow along as I'm going through this worksheet together and filling it out. If you're doing it, it's going to help you a lot, and it's going to help me know that you guys are interested. I also will probably go pretty fast as we get moving along because this exercise that we go through is oftentimes something I'll do in a 3 or 4 hour workshop with people. Obviously, there's more exercises and more interactivity involved, but we've got a short period of time, and I'm trying to crunch as much as I can into this. And in some cases, I'm working with clients over 3 or 4 months to kind of parse out some of this. The idea here is to give you the basic framework so that you can start building your own scalable, repeatable sales process. You guys cool with that? Awesome. And then at the end, if anybody else wants additional help with this and some of the concepts that we're covering, then I'm going to show you how to get help. And if you don't want help, that's cool too. Should we go? Yes. Can I get a hell yeah?
Let's go.
Hell yeah. Can I get an amen? Oh, man. That was like a Tuesday afternoon amen. That was like the 17 people on a weekday mass. Amen. What a real amen. How about an amen? Amen. All right, cool. So everybody got your worksheet? Here's where we're going to start. So the Q framework, as titled, 7 questions to build a scalable, repeatable sales process. How many questions? 7. How many? 7. Okay. I thought I heard somebody say 8. I was just making sure. Just kidding. So the very first question that we need to answer when we're building a repeatable, scalable sales process is what? So write this down. What? What's the what that I'm talking about here? What am I selling? Not quite. Who said that? Woo! What problem are we solving? What problem are we solving? The first and very first thing, and I know this sounds really basic, everybody's like, yes, of course, we want to be solutions providers. But then we get on the phone, and the first thing we start doing is telling you about all the wonderful things we can do around web strategy and mobile app development and website design, and oh, let me tell you about this client that I helped out over here. And it's all about what we do, not about the company's problem that we're selling to. And so the challenge here is if we're not focused on the company's problem first and foremost, the prospect's problem, then we have some big issues. And so thinking about, I was mentioning I'm going to ask my son to help me out with this presentation. He's actually not here. He's back in Davis, where we live. It would be really cool if he was here, but he's not. Can you guys see this? What does that look like to you? I'm just kind of curious. Who said sled? Thank you. It is all of those things. It is a cardboard box. It is a blue apron cardboard box, and it is kind of a sled. So here's what happened. We went to Boise, Idaho, where my in-laws live, over Christmas, and they got a ton of snow, getting a lot of wild winter all over the country. And in Boise, over Christmas, we got tons and tons of snow. And the good news is that in my in-laws' backyard, there's this nice, long, gentle slope where you can go sledding. The problem is they were completely sold out of sleds in the entire city of Boise, Idaho. Like, I called 4 or 5 different stores. We're out. We're expecting more shipment. But the problem is, with all the snow, we couldn't get more sleds in. And so I was like, wow, this is an issue. And then I realized we actually don't need a sled. We just need a way for my son to go sledding, right? So fortunately, even better, I am not an engineering guy. I don't know how to build stuff. Anything we buy from IKEA, my wife puts together. If it requires more than that, I hire someone. But fortunately, my friend Tim happened to be in town. And he came over for dinner, and we were sort of lamenting about the sledding issue. And he's like, oh, do you have a cardboard box? I said, yeah. You got some rope? Yeah. 15 minutes later, Tim made a much nicer version of this because this is after it's been used. And what I realized is that this was good enough for my son to go sledding. He didn't need a sled. What he needed to do was to be able to go sledding. And we wore this sucker out. Tim's from Minnesota, so apparently he's done this a lot. How many people here from Minnesota, Northwest, or Midwest? A lot of people I talk with. So this is probably not new. He's like, yeah, dude, I would have made this so much better than that guy, right? So the key is not focusing on what the product is. In this case, the perception of the product is I need a sled. But the actual problem is I just got to figure out a way for my son to go sledding, right? And so it's the same thing when we're talking to our customers. It's understanding what is the problem that we're trying to solve. And so the challenge is if we don't focus on the problem, then we look like amateurs to our customers because they're hearing all the same stuff. I get emails every day from people like you. Not you, I mean, you're much more professional, but they're typically overseas shops. Hey, this is so-and-so. We are based in this country, and we do these 17 things. I'm like, yeah, but I don't need any of those 17 things, right? They look like complete amateurs, right? What we want to do is look like experts. And so there was a conversation earlier today about doing white papers, right? What's the strategy on the way? How do we show people that we're experts, whether it's white papers or webinars or blog posts or whatever that is? What we have to do is come up with a strategy to show people that we are experts in their problem so that it becomes a consultative environment, that we look like a partner. And so one of the ways we can do that, tactically speaking, is using what's called 5 whys analysis. Anybody been to business school? Ever done root cause analysis? Or how many of you are a lot of you probably use Scrum, right? How many people use Scrum? More? Yes? Agile, all that stuff, right? So when things go wrong, do you ever do a retro? Yes? Cool. I can't see heads nodding because the sun the two sons of, what is it, Krypton, are staring at me. You want to do root cause analysis. So as an example, let's take the NFL. We talked about the NFL earlier today in the debate, right? So the problem, or the stated case that the NFL said to our debaters was, hey, we want to do website design, website refacing. Was that right, Carl? That was the case? They wanted to redesign the homepage of the NFL, right? Redesign NFL.com. Okay, so that's what they say that they want. Well, let's go do 5 whys really quickly. Why, and I'm going to do a hypothetical on this. If I'm talking to the NFL.com, you want to do website redevelopment. Why do you want to do that? Well, it turns out that our ticket sales are down. Okay, why are ticket sales down? Well, we've had a lot of problems with people generally being interested in the NFL because there's been all this concussion stuff out, and viewership has just been generally down altogether. Okay, so why is that important, or why does that problem exist? Well, we've actually not done a very good job in terms of public relations, even though publicly we tell people that we've been very proactive about the whole concussion thing. Like deep down inside, we all know that actually the NFL, we haven't done a very good job. And we're trying to change our image a lot. Okay, so why is that important? Well, the reason we need to change our image is because the NFL has been the kind of top sport in the United States for the last 10 years. But the problem is we're actually starting to get nipped by soccer. We're getting nipped by baseball is making a little bit of a comeback. The NHL has been doing actually pretty well relative to where it's been in the past. The NBA has been more popular than it's ever been because of all the star players they have. So, the real problem is we got to solve this core. We have an identity crisis here. We have a brand problem here. Oh, so the problem is not you need a new website. The problem here is you got to fundamentally shift the way people are thinking about your company, about your organization. It's a big difference in the way that conversation will go forward in the sale. Does that make sense? You guys with me? Cool. All right. So we want to focus on what problem are we solving first so that we don't look like an amateur and instead we look like an expert. Because once we get in that situation, now we've got a much higher base from which we can operate, okay? So the second question we need to answer is actually 2 and 3 are kind of mixed together. It's which and who. Which and who. So what might I mean by which and who in talking about the 7 questions to building your sales process? Talked about a little bit with Carl this morning as a little hint. Which segment are you focusing on? And who are the buyers in the organizations that you're selling to? Which segment are you focusing on, and who are the buyers? Now, segment can be defined pretty broadly. It doesn't necessarily have to mean a certain industry. It could mean industry. Hey, we really focus on health tech, or we really focus on retail. Segment could also mean across different industries, but people that have the same fundamental problem. Maybe they are companies that are going from being a Fortune 1000 to a Fortune 500 company. There's a fundamental transition that needs to happen in their digital strategy when they move from being a Fortune 1000 to a Fortune 500, right? So that in itself could be a segment, even though you're going to cover lots of different industries and verticals. Does that make sense? You guys with me? Yeah. So which segment are you focusing on? And then who are the buyers within those companies, right? So when we're talking about the buyers within those companies, there are a lot. How many people do you think are involved with a decision to buy your product, to buy your service? 10? It's a pretty good guess, right? We know it's definitely more than 1. How many people get the, gosh, I really love what you guys are doing. Send me the proposal, and then I'll pitch it to the rest of the team? Yeah. How many times do we get that sale? Never, right? So we've got to seek and find who are the buyers, who are the influencers, who are the decision makers, the stakeholders that are going to be involved with making the purchasing decision. And so the challenge is if we're not really focused on a specific segment and we don't really know who the buyers are, it turns into our selling turns into spray and pray. It's kind of like, well, we've never done health tech before, but Sally over here used to work at a hospital as a nurse, so we could kind of leverage that as expertise into getting this deal with Kaiser, right? Anybody ever do that? So the challenge is if we're not really focused on the segment, then we can't be experts at the problem. So the more you can focus on a segment, and I'll talk about some of the stats that Carl talked about earlier today, you need to really focus on segments, and then within those segments, we'll get much better at identifying who are ultimately the decision makers and the stakeholders that are going to be involved. So if we do it wrong, we end up with a spray and pray mentality, but if we do it right, then we're really focused. We have a target. We know what the message should be, right? So I was mentioning my son. This is a picture of me, my wife, and her sister. And just the way this photo looks, I kind of feel like he's the puppet master. Kind of imagine him pulling the strings. He knows who the buyers are anytime he wants something. So I asked just a moment ago how many buyers are typically involved with an enterprise level decision. It turns out the average is 6.7. That's from CB Insights. 6.7. So before you're doing a proposal and sending that off, before you're talking about what the price is going to be, let's make sure we find all 6.7 people and have an individual conversation with each of those buyers so we understand their perspective on the problem and why they want to buy the solution and why they need to solve this issue. Does that make sense? The other stat that's really interesting here is 5 to 10%. And what this means is that this is a study that was done by LabVIEW, or Open Lab, which is a sales organization. What they found is that it's almost certain that in the last 5 to 10% of the sale, there's one new buyer that gets introduced. Does that sound familiar? Procurement? Yeah, oftentimes procurement is that one last buyer. Yeah, so we get through the business sale, we talk to the business team is on board with all the work that we could do for them, and then they have to flip it over to procurement, and then for procurement has their own level of checklist. So that's a really good example of that last 5 to 10%. So we have to have this awareness. We know these things happen. We can't complain about it. We just have to prepare for it, right? And so lastly, when we're talking about focusing on a segment or focusing on a vertical, Carl mentioned that $8,000 is the increase, the premium that you get by focusing on a vertical. Did I get this right? Yeah. So $8,000. So there's a real payoff here. It's not imaginary. It's better for your customers, but it's also much better for you. So focusing in on what problem are you solving, and then which segment and who buyers, what that does for you is identify exactly how to do your prospecting or how to do your marketing. Because if we know the core problems and we know the core challenges that the segments that we're going after have, and we know who the buyers should be, that yields for us where and how we should do our prospecting and marketing. In some cases, it's LinkedIn. In other cases, it's webinars. Maybe it's a white paper. Maybe it's going to do conferences and events. There's a lot of different ways that you can do your prospecting and do your marketing, but until we know the problem ultimately that we're solving in a way and being able to articulate it in a way that makes sense to the target customer, then all the money and all the time we're spending on the prospecting and on the marketing is wasted. Does that make sense? Feeling a little slow energy. Is this helpful so far? We're good? Okay, cool. So those are the first 3 questions. What problem are we solving, which segment, and who are the buyers? So next on your worksheet, work your way down to the second column, first row. Next question. The next two questions are also somewhat interrelated. So the first of those two is where. And what I mean by where, what I'm talking about specifically is where are we in the sale? Where are we in the sale? So oftentimes we might get a very excited phone call from somebody at some big company that says, hey, we saw the work you've done. We really love what you do. We'd love for you to send a proposal so that we could check out and compare you to some other people. And so we do that sometimes. 75% of us apparently are doing it, even though we don't want to. And we send that off and we feel like, okay, well, maybe we've got a deal here. Well, the truth is we haven't done any of the heavy lifting. We haven't talked to 6.7 buyers. We know that we're just really early stage, but a lot of times our teams or ourselves might fool ourselves into thinking that we're much further along in this deal. So we have to be really clear about where are we in the sale? What constitutes early stage investigation of a new sales opportunity? And what constitutes true late stage? Now, let's be honest about that. So if we're not clear about where we are in the sale, sometimes we're just lost. We have this pipeline of sales opportunities, and we kind of go through them, and we're like, yeah, we're waiting for that one, and waiting to hear back from them. I think they're going to be at a conference next month, so we could try to hook up with them there. And gosh, we sent that proposal 3 weeks ago. Maybe we should give them a call, waiting to hear back, right? So we've done all this work we're way ahead. We're ready to start. Like we've sent the proposal or we've done a lot of the presentation and we're like way ahead of where the customer is. The customer's way back there and we're trying to like pull them forward, but they're not ready yet. They're still way back here. And you're like way out there. So it's important for us to know where we are in the sale because if we get this right, then we're able to see with real objectivity, whether or not this deal that we're working on right now, is it really a serious one or is it one that's still pretty early stage? And that's good for us as business planners to be able to know if we need to staff up or we need to go talk to some of the people we bring on in part-time, some of the contractors to know, hey, got a deal, but it could still be 6 more months. Or, hey, actually, this deal could happen in the next 6 weeks. So we want to be able to see where we are in the sale. And then the second question that's related to this is when. And this is a place that for probably about half of my sales career, I didn't realize the importance of this. And what I mean by when is the next step? When is the next step in the sale? So if they say to us, hey, this sounds really great, we'll get back to you in 2 weeks, who's in control? You or them? They are, right? If instead we're able to control when the next step is, then we have command, right? So for you guys, give me one good example of how you could wrestle control back. You're in a situation where one of your customers says, we'll get back to you in 2 weeks and let you know what we want to do next. What might you do? Schedule a call prior to providing the proposal. And what kind of incentive could you give to those people that they would actually want to schedule that call with you? Because a lot of times they might go, yeah, no, I totally get it. We should schedule a call, but I want to wait until we hear back from the rest of the team.
We won't deliver a proposal without a presentation.
Yeah, and why is that important? What could you...
We want to make sure that what we're delivering aligns with the presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. So to help us align expectations, maybe we could have a quick call just to go through your objectives with our capabilities. That way, when we put together that proposal, we'll be much clearer, and you'll be much clearer about what we can do for you guys. Good way to wrestle back control. So a lot of times what ends up happening, if we don't know when the next action is, we're kind of in this situation that feels like hope. We're hoping that they call us back. We're hoping that they like the proposal. We're hoping that when I sent over a couple of those case studies that they're reading them and sharing them with the rest of the team. But what we want to do is we want to be in command. And so if we can leverage for ourselves these action steps into our sales process, that's going to give us a lot more command of the next conversation. So a good example of this, I mentioned my son, he likes to watch these GoPro videos. He's been watching GoPro videos now for about 6 or 7 months, and he's been talking about skiing. Well, finally, he's been in control of the next step because every time it snows in California, which has been a lot lately, he's like, when are we going skiing? When are we going skiing? I heard it's snowing up there. So he's in control because he's already seeded with me that he wants to go skiing, and now every time it snows, he's got leverage on me, right? So finally, we got him some lessons over Christmas, and in one day, he's on his skis, going down the hill, and he thinks he's on the GoPro videos. He calls them Velcro videos, by the way. The Velcro videos. But more specifically, when we're talking about your business, one of the things that I would encourage you to do is think about building what I call a close plan. Building a close plan. So if what we're doing here is we're layering in the where and the when into one strategy document for you to use internally. So the idea here is the where is, as I was talking about earlier, where are we in the sale? Is it early stage or is it late stage? If we're not really clear about the needs of the customer, if we haven't gotten them to articulate for us what problems that they have, and we're not really clear about what other options they're considering, it's probably pretty early stage, right? We don't know what competitors we're up against. We don't know if they're considering some in-house team. How many people have run up against an in-house team? Oh, we could do that, right? Happens all the time in the software world. And then late stage is, okay, now we're starting to get a lot of questions about price or timing or implementation or support or value versus hourly base, however you want to slice and dice it, right? So we know we have these kind of major stages to the sale. The needs analysis is early stage, evaluation of options, resolution of concerns is middle stage, late stage is when we actually get things rolling, right? So what if we could layer into that a series of actions, a series of steps, so that we know as a checklist internally with our teams that, hey, if we haven't done these 4 or 5 things, then we're not in control. If we don't know, for example, one of the things I love to do with people in the early stages is say, hey, I'd love to see a demo of your product, or I'd love to see some of your work. Go, great, love to show that to you. You know, one of the things we'd like to do as well is actually see a demo of your product and hear some case studies of some of your customers so we have a better idea of who you're serving and what problems you're solving for your customers. And they go, oh, that's actually a really good idea. So now we have some leverage. It's like, I'll show you mine if you show me yours, right? But it's a way to change fundamentally the relationship so you can learn more about their customers and their process and their product, and it's a way for you to have more control over the next step. Another good one is a mutual NDA, right? Can be a really simple document. What is getting an NDA signed? How does that help you in your sales process? What does that signal to you? Commitment? What else does it signal? Trust? What else does it signal? Can some administrative assistant or project manager get an NDA signed? Not usually. Like, it's a lot of work. If you're dealing with a big company especially, trying to get even an NDA signed, pushed through legal, takes some work. It takes some leverage. It takes some social capital. So just something as simple as getting a mutual NDA signed is a signal to you that you're dealing with somebody that has leverage, or somebody that's a decision maker, right? Or later stage, right? You're talking about, they're asking lots of questions about price or implementation. How's this thing going to work? How are we going to be successful? Hey, I've got a great idea. Why don't we have a discussion around service level agreements? So we're really clear about what your expectations are, and we're really clear on what we can deliver for you. It's a great test, and it's a great way to keep control of the next step. So these are just a couple of different examples that I've used in the software world, some of which would be very applicable for you with some of the digital agency work that you're doing. Does that make sense? Is this useful? Yeah, cool. So when we put these two things together, the where and the when, what this does is tell us what the sales pipeline truly is. Because one of the hardest things that we're doing as owners of companies, like most of us are not salespeople by breed. Like I was a history major in college, which meant my choices were be a teacher, work in a museum, or sell. I chose selling because one of my roommates was in sales, a couple years older. He's like, dude, you'd be really good at sales. That's how I got into sales, right? And I learned, making a lot of mistakes, how to get really good at it. Most of us here we've done sales because we have to do sales. We're expected to do sales. We're expected to lead the sales effort. Most of you raised your hand when I asked in the beginning of the conversation, how many of you, by percentage, are responsible for selling? Most of you said yes, right? So what this does, just these two questions, the where and the when, help you fairly evaluate where you are with your process with each individual sales opportunity. Does that make sense? Cool. So let's get to the last two questions here. So we've covered what problem, which segment, who buyers, where are we, referring to the stages of the sale, early or late. We've talked about how you keep control of the next step, what actions people can take, you can take. So the last two questions, probably the most important, because they're important to your customers more importantly than they are to you. So the first question is why? And what's the why here? Why what? Why you, why now? Yeah? Why this, why you, why now? Yeah? Why else? Why should they buy? Why should they buy? There's a lot of pressure. These are big decisions, not only from a monetary standpoint. In fact, the monetary piece of these decisions that you're involved with it's probably one of the least important aspects of the overall decision for these companies. It's not about the money. most of these companies have the wherewithal to spend 100K or 200K or 500K or even 10K if you're dealing with small projects, right? It's not about the money. The problem is, if we haven't shown them why they should buy from us, then we're perceived as a cost. But what we want to do is be perceived as an ROI, as a return on investment. And this is where a lot of sales end up stalling out, where we go, yeah, we've got this big need, and you guys really nailed the problem. We appreciate it. We're really good at firing in or zoning in on a certain segment. We know who the buyers are because we've been involved with those decisions before with companies just like them. We've got that figured out. We've built in some steps so that we still maintain control, that we have a good conversation and a good flow going. Then we send the proposal, or we send whatever kind of presentation or pitch that we're doing, and everything slows down. Like, not quite sure we want to go forward right now. And a lot of times it's because they're not clear on what the ROI is. So there's really just 4 reasons enterprise buy. They either want to increase revenue, they want to decrease cost, so it's basically increase profitability, right? Either you can help them directly increase revenue, or you can help them directly reduce cost, or you can help them increase efficiency, make their jobs easier. Maybe it's, I can sell more stuff, I can hire fewer people, or they want to decrease risk. We need to be able to articulate any of those 4 reasons using numbers. Because if we can't, for the customer, we end up in a situation where we just look like cost. So this is a picture. We were out at the beach a couple weeks ago up in Northern California, and God bless him, was super tired. We had him out all day, which was awesome. But then he didn't want to walk back to the car. So, hey man, if you just walk back to the car, we will stop at the coffee shop and get you a cookie. He knew his ROI, right? But more importantly, what we want to do, and this is an opportunity to go back to your current customers and really understand why did they buy from us, because that can give us the foundation on what we can use as the story and the questions to use with future customers. So one of the customers I had in the past is Freddie Mac. And I was selling data solutions to them. And once we got things up and running and things were going smoothly, kind of went back after about 6 months, did an on-site visit with the executive that was responsible for actually putting to work all the data that we were sending over to them. And we got into a pretty good relationship, but he never really told me why he bought this data. He just told us, like, I really, really need this data. It's like, okay. So we sat down, and he handed me this 1-page spreadsheet. And I had no idea what was on the spreadsheet. If you ever looked at somebody else's spreadsheet, it never makes sense, right? You're like, I don't know what the hell this is, but you just nod your head. And so I said, Charles, what exactly am I looking at here? He said, that spreadsheet is a $65 million spreadsheet. I said, okay. He said, on the columns are the top 10 banks that we are buying mortgages from and servicing mortgages. This is back in 2000. This was in 2009, 2010. So lots of stuff happening in the housing market. And because of your data, we have visibility about the properties in those portfolios that we didn't have before. And because we have visibility about the properties in those portfolios, we've been able to save $65 million in mortgage servicing costs. And I was like, damn, I should have charged you more money. Value-based. Turns out, he said, you know what, if you would have charged me more, I would have had to say no, because it was about a $250,000 deal. That's all I had in the budget. So what you priced was about right. That's all I had. I couldn't have spent more, and I would have pushed you down if you tried to charge more. But the thing is, there was no way for me to find that information out. He wasn't going to be willing to divulge that information to me early in the sales process. But after he became a customer, now I had that information. I was like, now I can go back to other customers in the financial market and ask them about mortgage servicing costs. So one of the challenges I have for you is to go back to some of your customers and ask them, like, help us understand what the ROI is for the work that we've done for you. Like, if we had to put numbers to this, what kind of numbers would you put to it? Because it's going to do 2 things for you. One, it's going to help you get much more clear about how you can sell in the future and how you can ask questions to future customers like that so that you can establish an ROI prior to the sale. But secondly, now it's an opportunity to go and say, well, wow, that's really cool. We helped generate $5 million in revenue because we installed this e-commerce solution for you. What other kind of projects might we take on this year? If we got you a $5 million revenue gain for your $50K investment with us, maybe we should look at doing more. So now it becomes a business planning and a strategy call. And another one of the slides that Carl showed was that many of you get a bulk of your revenue from upselling current accounts. So let's go back to the well if we can prove success. So why people buy is really, really critical. We need to have those numbers. Otherwise, people perceive you as a cost, right? So the last question we want to ask is how. What's the how here? Somebody's thinking of the answer, you're just not telling me. This is the last question here. This is pre-sale. We need to answer this one last question to get people over the finish line. How do we measure? That's a good one. How do we get started is even closer. It's what's the plan? How will this thing work? Give me some visibility of the future. So we do our best in the proposals. We try to put in what we think they want to see and what's been successful in the past, but it's oftentimes not personalized to them. And so if we don't give them a really clear plan on how this is going to work, then they feel confused. And confused people don't buy, right? Have you ever, I walked into a Verizon store about a year ago. I had to get an upgrade on my phone. I was running out of memory. I walked in there. Anybody else have a Verizon phone? Anybody yet to understand their new pricing plan? You know what I'm talking about? Like you can lease it or you can buy it or you can do this or that. I walked in there ready to buy the phone, ready to upgrade. The salesperson talked me out of it because he confused the hell out of me. He took out some random piece of paper and he started scratching stuff on paper. I was like, okay, I think I get it, but I'm going to take some more time. And it took me 2 months to go back to that very same store and get a different salesperson before I upgraded my phone because I was just confused. And our customers feel the same way. If we don't give them a really clear plan, then they're not going to feel comfortable investing their time and money in us. And so if instead, I will come back to this in a second, if we can give them certainty, then they're going to be a lot more comfortable working with us. So oftentimes, and this came up with both speakers on the value price, the value versus time pricing argument, which is, hey, you get this request for an RFP, what do you do? And both people said, well, actually what I would do is say before we respond to the RFP, we need to understand more about your needs. But more so, what I tell people is, look, would love to do a proposal for you. Nothing brings me more joy than doing a proposal. I'm a salesman. Can't wait to do a proposal. So that I put what's in there, so that I put in there what you need to see, let's have 2 or 3 conversations with the key people that are going to be involved with the implementation so that I'm clear about the support you're going to need from us in order to make that plan successful. So say yes to the proposal because they don't want to hear you're not going to do a proposal. Say, yeah, I'd love to do a proposal. In order for me to do that, what we want to do is work out the plan of the key people that are going to be involved and how that's going to work and what support you need from us and what support you're going to give to us, give to me in order for this deal to be successful. Once we have those things, then we'll have all the information that you need for me to put into a proposal. So instead of proposals, do work plans. It's the same thing, you're just calling it different. Something different, and you're getting the information you need from the people, right? So the last thing I'll say on this piece is that a short pencil is better than the longest memory. You ever heard this saying before? A short pencil is better than the longest memory. So yesterday, or actually this morning, I got this text. So Sunday was my son's birthday. And so they had to do this timeline exercise at school. Like, how old? What did you do when you were 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? So this is a really good example of bad memory. Because he was not born in Oakland, California. Yes, we did go to Ocean City when he was 1. He did play in the grass when he was 2, but apparently that's the most important thing he remembered from his entire second year. In year 3, he helped me build a treehouse. We don't have a treehouse. I don't know where he got that from. When he was 4, we went to Portland, Oregon to play in the snow. We did go to Portland. It was in July. And his 5th year, I will learn gymnastics. He's taken 1 gymnastics lesson so far. It started last week. So I just use this as an example. This is just the way memories work. Your customer's memory works the same way. We tell them these things, we tell them these things, we tell them these things. And we even put in the proposal what we think they want to hear, but then history changes. So the idea of doing this work plan is to give a lot more certainty on both for you to be clear that you heard what they said and to be clear that they said what they meant. Because I always tell people there's 4 conversations. There's what you wanted to say, what you thought you said, what you actually said, and what the other person heard. So let's get everything down on paper. Let's put together the plan, and then you'll have your proposal, Mr. Customer. So those are, here's an example of a work plan that we did selling software to First Republic Bank. It could be simple, could be more complex. It's just a way to kind of break down and get some future pacing. Like, hey, let's not talk about price yet. Let's talk about how this thing's going to work. Once we know how this thing's going to work, then I can get you the price. Because if I give you the price now, chances are I'm probably going to overprice it. Because there's a lot of stuff that I'm going to put into that proposal that you don't need, or there's a lot of things you could do to help us support the implementation, or we could start small and grow it down the road. But if you're just depending on me to come up with all the ideas here in a black box, it's going to be really tough for me to come up with the right price. So let's just work out the details, then I get you the exact price down to the penny. Right? So if we are really clear on why people are buying and how they buy from us, that's where we get to the conversion of paying customers. So we started off with what problem, which segment, and who. That tells us where to prospect, how to market what we do, because we can be really clear on the message that we're sending out and the method by which we're sending that message, because it could be a webinar, it could be a white paper, it could be a Facebook ad, it could be email marketing campaign, it could be cold calling, right? It just depends on the market and the problem and the message. Secondly, if we know and we're honest about getting visibility on where we are in the sale and when the next steps are, that helps us manage our sales pipeline in an open and honest way. And then finally, once we give our customers a reason why they should buy from us and how this thing's going to work, that's the final step to getting them to convert into paying customers. So last thing I want to do, you guys up for doing a little drawing exercise? Yeah? That was, you ready? Cool. Back of the sheet, flip it over. Draw a triangle. I suggest an equilateral triangle with the apex at the top of the page. Everybody got that? Cool. So at the top of the triangle, write paying customers. Bottom right, write in prospecting. Bottom left, type in pipeline. So if you're thinking about, okay, how do I apply this framework? How do I create a cycle? How do I create a process here? We always start at the top. We start with who we want our customers to be. That's why I asked in the very beginning, how many of you feel like you want better customers? You want more of your ideal customers. We have to remember who we want our perfect customers to be, both in terms of the types of customers, the ones that treat us like partners, the ones that appreciate the work that we do and the value that we bring to them, but also the types of customers that can write the size checks that we want to write, that we want to have written for us. So we have to be really, really clear on who we want to be our paying customers, right? And then we work our way down to prospecting, because once we know, we'll come to this, we work our way down to prospecting, over to the sales pipeline, and then back up to paying customers. So what I want to do here, so just draw 3 arrows, just so you know the direction. Everybody got 3 arrows? A couple nods? Yep. Good? Cool. So the first side here, what we're looking at is what and who. So by being clear on what problem we're solving and who we're solving it for, that yields for us how we do our prospecting. We just talked about that, right? How we do our prospecting or how we do our marketing. Next, once we are clear on how we're prospecting, we're starting to get those leads in the funnel, or you've got a salesperson, a business development person I was talking to a couple people today that have started to hire kind of a sales development rep, somebody who's responsible for just generating more conversations. If I could just get the right people on the phone and start talking to them about the work that we've done and the problems that they have, then I can, as the founder, as the president of the company, I can make this connection, right? But I don't have a ton of time to be doing 100 phone calls or be doing my research on LinkedIn or be following up with inbound leads, right? So even if you can just focus in that new salesperson on this piece of it, be clear on, hey, these are the kinds of problems that we solve, this is the message, and these are the people I want you to go after, that will generate for you a basket of prospects to then work on, start building your sales pipeline. And that's where you, as a manager, as a leader of the organization, need to be able to be objective about where are we in the sale? What are the next steps? How do we go from early stage opportunity where somebody's kind of having an interesting conversation to somebody who's really interested in buying and implementing? How many people like interesting conversations versus interested in buying? There's no shortage of interesting conversations, right? And then finally, then we layer in the why and the how, and that's what converts those deals in your sales pipeline. Once your prospective customers are really clear why they want to buy, why you're an ROI, why the investment with you is going to get them a return in terms of revenue or cost reduction or increased efficiency or decreased risk, and how this thing's going to work, then they're going to be willing to take action and convert into your perfect, ideal paying customer. So this first side is all about giving you clarity, giving your organization, giving your team clarity about who are we going after, what are our perfect problems to solve. We need clarity and focus in order to do our prospecting. Secondly, being really clear about where we are in the sale and how we leverage command, how we retain command in the sales conversation. That's all about control. And then finally, that last piece, getting people to take action because they know why they're buying and how this thing's going to work. That's giving them confidence that they can take that action. And it's also giving you confidence that you can charge the price you want to charge, the price that you deserve to charge, because you know the value that you're bringing to those people. So whether you charge time-based or value-based is irrelevant. You just want to be able to charge more because you're confident enough that you can point to these numbers, say, hey, when we do this project, you're going to get this in return, and you can be rest assured this is how this thing's going to work successfully. So when we put those three things together, clarity, control, and confidence, that's what gets you clients, conversions, and your company's sales process. You guys good? Okay, now what? I'm going to give you a homework assignment. Who likes homework? Got one. Nerd. I like to do this exercise called 1-3. So there's a lot of information that's coming at you. Some of you might agree wholeheartedly with some of this. Some of you might go like, yeah, I know. I've been doing this problem thing. It still doesn't work. What I want you to do is find one key aspect of something that I've shared with you today. Zero in on the one thing that you think you could do to start shifting your sales and your sales process at your company. And then I want you to write out 3 first steps. So find one thing in everything that we talked about that you feel like is most relevant to your situation in your company. So maybe it's like, gosh, you know what? We really have not done a good job of focusing on customer problems. And this idea of doing a root cause analysis or 5 whys, maybe I can start instituting that in my next couple of sales calls. So when somebody tells me they want a website redesign, I'm going to do this 5 whys thing, right? So maybe that's your one thing. For somebody else, you might go, gosh, we're really good on the first couple parts of the sales process, but at the end of the day, we haven't gotten really clear about why people are buying our services. So one of the things I could do is go back to a couple of our most successful ideal customers and ask them, why did they buy? And what kind of ROI are they getting? Maybe that's the one thing for you. So choose one thing out of everything that we've talked about, and then pick 3 action items for you and your team to start implementing so that you can start to put this stuff to work. Can you guys do that? Yes? All right, cool. So last thing I wanted to mention is that at the beginning of the presentation, I mentioned that I've got a couple ways to get more help if you want it. So one is, I'm going through a lot of different ideas and a lot of questions. I've actually built out an entire workbook. It's a Q framework workbook. So every couple pages is a set of different questions that you can sit down with your team or with yourself if you're a small team. And for each segment of this framework, the what, the who, the why, the how, the where, the when, is go through and just do the work. And I do it on paper on purpose, because you got to get out of your computer. For example, understanding needs analysis. Like, what problems are you setting out to solve with your product? How does your market and your future customers articulate this problem? Like, going through this exercise booklet, I think you'll find it will be extremely valuable. So if you're interested in getting a copy, then I'm happy to send that to you. It's just a PDF email that I can send. You can print out, share it with your team. The second thing that I'll do is, one of the things that I wanted to offer to some folks that feel like, look, the sales thing, I got enough from the workshop today, or from the talk today, but I'd like to just kind of apply what's going on in my company and understand how I might start putting some of this stuff to work. So if you're interested in just doing a 20-minute quick call, then I'm happy to do a kind of a strategy session with you. I've set up Calendly. I don't know if anybody used Calendly. Yeah, it's pretty cool. There's a couple spots I've been able to block off over the next few weeks, mostly in the afternoon Pacific time. So if you just go to this Calendly site, you just click on it, and then find a time that works for you. If you have like a business development person, or you have a co-founder that you want to hop on the call with. We usually do 3 things on this call. One is getting really clear on what your current situation is. 2, where do you want to go by the end of this year, especially this time of year where a lot of us are thinking about the next 10 to 12 months. And thirdly, identifying usually 2 to 3 specific areas where you can start to work on your sales process. So it's just a way to apply some of the stuff that we've talked about here today specifically into your business. So if you're interested in either of those, the workbook or booking a call, or both, if you want to book a call, you can just go to the website. If you want to get a copy of the workbook, I just got little cards. Just come over here, write your name and your email address, and I'll have either Amber or Julian or Aziva, or somebody that works for me, email that out to you. Cool. So I think we're right at time. Is that correct? Cool. Doc?